fighting games. You can get Gorehowl. I've seen Gorehowl win some games, but I hadn't seen Assassin's Blade just yet, and that's another really good one to get off that card.
Yeah, I think people are realizing just like the math on that card is there's just so many good results. Of course, sometimes you're going to get the Cursed Blade and you're going to cry, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't run it. Just the card's just really good and just a lot of value.
Yeah, I mean, I want to do the math on it once. I don't know how many weapons there are available to get that card, but there's one really bad one, which is Cursed Blade, and then there's a bunch that are like, all right, I got this card, that's fine. And there's like 3 or 4 where you're like, oh yeah, this is the best possible. But Gladiator's Longbow, I've been seeing that one decide so many games in close matches lately. And now Brian the Rat Cortade, he's in that familiar position. I just got to get one win with my Reno Lock deck, but that's been the difficult thing for him to do today.
Yeah, a lot of people brought this deck in the European prelims. I was watching this morning and it just seemed like all the well-known players were just all really liking Reno Lock, and I was surprised because, I don't know, as we see here, it's struggling.
Yeah, and you know what? I was actually kind of surprised too, because the more I play with it and the more I cast it, I've just been seeing it get destroyed. And I don't know if it's, playing against the better players, they understand how to beat this deck more, or maybe just all their draws have been subpar in the spots that I've seen. Or maybe I'm not playing the deck correctly, which is probably the most, realistic answer, but I just don't think this deck is at the level that it was before. I mean, it's still very powerful, but it's definitely feels worse to me for sure.
I mean, the big thing is that Reno is really good against control decks, and in that situation, it's a lot of times just going to get banned, but, we're in a situation where there's no bans, and Rat's finding the aggressive players. He found LBYS, he found Shocky, and they're going to pick up on this Reno Lock all day.
Mm-hmm. Now, this Demon Wrath, it's actually, kind of interesting here if you were to play it. It kills the Knife Juggler, but it doesn't remove any of the other guys from the board. You still get the 1/1 left over from Possessed Villager, and then the Flame Imp stays there as well. If you play Brand Bronzebeard, there's no good attacks on board for LBYS. There's some pumps and stuff that make it kind of bad, but it's also like a roadblock that he just has to deal with. You can't let that guy sit around.
We decided to go with the Demon Wrath anyway. It's definitely not doing much, but against Zoo, it's not going to be doing too much throughout the entire game, so it's not bad to use it there.
Yeah, he pretty much traded 3 mana for a Knife Juggler and the front half of a Possessed Villager, and I don't think that's too bad, because his hand is, it's not the greatest. He has a lot of some tools. He has Earthring Farseer. He's got the Cult Apothecary. He has the Shadow Flame to kind of have an AOE effect. It's just a lot of stuff's kind of slow, and LBYS is still on the board and still pushing damage. And then, once you make that play, it's like, what do you do this turn, Yeah,
he's at another awkward point where he doesn't have that, Twilight Drake to start contesting things. He just has, the 3rd drop, which just isn't strong enough, and he realizes that, so he's just going to go ahead and tap and search for something else.
Yeah, we haven't seen him have a Twilight Drake either. Maybe that's why he's been struggling so much, is his draws just, haven't really been cooperating in the way that he wants him to, Twilight Drake on 4 is such an important card in this matchup. Just getting that 4/8, 4/9, 4/10 into play to contest the board for that long is a really big deal. And LBYS goes ahead and goes real wide on this board yet again, and there's no way for the Rat to really punish this other than this Cult Apothecary gaining 12 life. But he can get a bunch of this damage right back and keep minions off the board, so Shadow Flame isn't something that he has to worry about.
Yeah, there's definitely no world where LBYS leaves this minion up. And he's realizing that right now. Shadow Flame's just always too big of a threat. And if you just keep your board safe, then we'll push repetitive damage and definitely moves you closer to winning the game.
Yeah, and I like this. He's just going to make practically the same plays. You had such a hard time dealing with this board last turn. I'm just going to put the same board up. And if you look at LBY's hand, he has 14 damage burst in his hand just waiting to finish this game off. Let's see, what are you really looking for here? Would have been one of the big top decks here. Acidic Swampos would have been good earlier in the turn. You could have played that and cleared with Shadow Flame.
So what the big thing here is going to be is if he could put enough damage in, which I think he will be able to, that the Leroy with the power and the Soulfire is going to just kill him next turn, because the Rat's going to have to go for something like the Farseer Shadow Flame to clear this board.
Ooh, he picks up Crazed Alchemist too. If he wants to, he can actually use this to get a better trade. here, where he doesn't have to remove as much power from the board. Yeah, this allows him to push a lot more damage this turn, as you said, and this gets him all the way down to 14. We see Leroy Jacobs plus Power Overwhelming plus Soulfire. And if my math's correct, that's 14 next turn.
Yeah, but the Farseer is going to heal him up, so he's just going to be a little bit off.
Yeah, but he's going to be able to Farseer plus Shadow Flame the entire board away here. But I really like the way LBS has paced this game for sure. Is there any world in which the Rat doesn't use Farseer for this?
I'd be very, very surprised. But
yeah, this is just so clean and so efficient with your mana.
Yeah. LBYS is definitely still very ahead. We don't see the Reno in the Rat's hand. That would definitely be the biggest pickup for him, as you know, it always is for Reno Lock.
Mm-hmm. And a big draw for him there, getting a Flame Up, just any other minion to put on board that has power here, because he doesn't want to use his Abusive Sergeant if he doesn't have to. He gets a couple of all these cards in his hand to get just a huge burst turn next turn that Brian the Rat Cortade might not be ready for. It's just so much damage out of nowhere. We're going to have to see what play is he going to make this turn, and is he going to keep him from dying? He does have a couple of Defender of Argus plays this turn if he wants. He can start off with the Dark Peddler, see what card he gets, can maybe pair it with Acidic Swamp Ooze into a Defender of Argus and hope this is enough to buy him some extra draw steps here. Shifter Xeris, that card is can be a lot of fun. It can turn into a Reno. You never know.
I didn't even realize how low LBYS is getting. He got to 13 just somehow. Is that just from, I guess, tapping himself down already?
Mm-hmm.
So if he gets he might take the PO just because if he's thinking if he top decks the Leroy, it's going to be lethal. And that's probably just going to be a better idea than the Shifter, but I guess he's valuing that instead. And the Defender of Argus is definitely just going to be what he needs to survive for this turn. But
all right,
that's actually it.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is actually it, right? With Leroy, Power Overwhelming, Abusive Sergeant, Soulfire. That is a ton of damage here. I was going to say, this is 10.
So it's exact.
16, yeah, and then the attack with the minion. Yeah, this is exactly 17.
So now we're left with the Aggro Paladin, which we've also seen struggle. So it's just the battle of the struggling decks. And I think Aggro Paladin's got to be favored just because it's got 2 Divine Favors, and Reno Lock always got a lot of cards in hand. And the other thing about it is just that card, the 3/3, that gives the Divine Shields. Like, if that gets on board and it sticks, Reno Lock can just not deal with it.
That's actually a really good point. That card seems like a nightmare to deal with. I couldn't stop laughing at. Did you watch Brian the Rat Cortade during that last turn?
Yeah.
Like his facial expressions, he's like, yeah, whatever, man. Come on.
He just knows.
His reaction.